Before we start, please don't forget to like and subscribe. The moment I stepped onto the driveway, I knew something was wrong. It wasn't just the way Emily jumped out of that sleek black Audi like her feet were on fire. It was the way Mark leaned out of the driver's window, grinning like a man who thought he'd already won. "Ryan," he said, lips curling around my name like it left a bad taste. "Didn't expect to see you home so early." Emily didn't look back. Her heels clicked furiously against the concrete as she rushed past me, cheeks redder than a summer sunburn. Purse clenched to her chest like a shield. Not a single word. I turned to Mark. Took one slow step forward. "You're leaning pretty far out for a man with boundaries." He laughed, forced, nervous. "Relax. Emily and I were just talking about the quarterly numbers. Big client coming in next week, so yeah." I cut him off, stepping closer. "Is that before or after you tried to kiss her?" His smile twitched. "I think you're misunderstanding the situation." "No," I said flat and low. "I think you're confusing my silence for weakness. Let me be crystal clear, Mark. You come near my wife again, in this car, in our house, at work, I don't care if you're carrying a golden briefcase from the governor. I will dismantle that smug look with actions you won't forget." Mark blinked. Once. Twice. His jaw flexed like he wanted to speak, but all that confidence he'd rolled in with? Gone. I gave him a smile, not a nice one. "Turn that car around and drive back to whatever corner office you slithered out of." He shifted in his seat, muttered something under his breath, and finally threw the car into reverse. Tires whispered down the street as he vanished into the early evening haze. I stood there for a beat, letting the weight of it settle in the cooling air. The sky over Colorado was bruising into twilight, the kind that paints everything in orange regret. Porch lights clicked on across the neighborhood. Somewhere, a sprinkler hissed to life. Suburbia, neat lawns, two-car garages, and secrets hiding behind window blinds. We'd lived here for 6 years. Split-level ranch, a swing set in the backyard I built with my own hands, dog asleep in the garage. I taught at the local high school. History, the kind of job where parents thanked you at grocery stores and kids rolled their eyes at your dad jokes. Emily worked in tech sales, rising fast, always dressed like she had somewhere more important to be. Our life was normal. Comfortably, predictably normal. At least, it had been. Until tonight. Because when your wife jumps out of another man's car without meeting your eyes, that's not normal. That's a warning shot. And I'd heard it loud and clear. So if tonight was the start of something, then so be it. Let the truth come crawling. I'd face it head on. The house was quiet when I walked in, unnaturally so. No TV, no music humming from the smart speaker, not even the clatter of Emily's heels on the hardwood. Just the low tick of the kitchen clock and the faint hum of the fridge. She was already there when I entered, standing at the island, pouring herself a glass of wine with the kind of practiced calm that made my stomach twist. Her eyes didn't meet mine when I spoke. "So what's it like?" She paused, then turned halfway, arching a brow. "What's what like? Flirting with your boss?" I said, voice cool as the granite countertop between us. "In your own driveway, while your husband watches." She snorted, shook her head like I'd just accused her of stealing mail. "He's just friendly, Ryan. You know that. Mark flirts with everyone, waitresses, interns, the barista at Java and Company. That's his personality." I walked further in, leaned against the opposite counter. "Right. And he just happens to drive you home every Thursday now? Waits in the driveway like a bad rom-com scene? That part of his friendly streak too." Emily set the wine glass down a little harder than necessary. "He was giving me a ride back from the airport. My car's in the shop, if you forgot." "I didn't forget," I said evenly. "What I remember is him leaning in like he was about to kiss you. And you didn't stop him. You ran." She turned fully then, arms crossed, face drawn tight. "What do you want me to say, Ryan? That I'm sleeping with him? Because I'm not. And if I was, I wouldn't be dumb enough to do it in front of our neighbor's ring cam." I didn't flinch. "You don't have to be sleeping with him yet for it to count." Her mouth opened, then shut again. She took a long breath, like she was holding back more than just words. "Oh my God," she muttered, looking away. "This is exactly why I didn't tell you he was giving me rides. You get like this, jealous, suspicious, turning nothing into some soap opera." "Right," I said, crossing the room slowly, my voice calm but sharp. Because when a married woman's boss pulls into her driveway, leans halfway into her personal space like he's about to make a move, and she bolts without a word, The husband's supposed to just wave politely from the window? She looked at me then, really looked. Her eyes weren't guilty. They were irritated. Like I just messed up her perfect schedule. You know what, Ryan? Maybe the problem isn't Mark. Maybe it's you. You've been slow lately. Like you're stuck. Your job, your life, your routine, everything's the same. I'm working late, traveling, pushing for promotions. I'm trying to grow. And you're just standing still. Oh, there it was. The truth, finally sneaking out between the cracks. I nodded slowly. So this is about growth? That's why he leans in and you don't stop him? That's what success looks like now. She laughed bitterly. I didn't cheat on you. No, I said, turning toward the hallway. You just flirted back while he tried to. Difference of paperwork, I guess. I started to leave, but her voice stopped me cold. You really think I'd throw our whole marriage away for a man like him? I turned my head just enough to see her. I don't think you meant to throw anything. I think you're still holding the match, wondering why the room smells like smoke. Emily blinked. Once. Then she picked up her wine glass and disappeared down the hall, heels clicking like metronome ticks into silence. I stayed there for a long minute, staring at the half-empty bottle of Cabernet on the counter. There were no screams. No plates broken. Just two people in a house that used to be warm, now barely room temperature. And somewhere beneath it all, I could feel it starting, the slow disintegration of something that once held us together. 3 days passed without either of us mentioning the driveway again. Not because things were better, but because everything between us had gone stiff and quiet, like the air before a Colorado hailstorm. On Thursday evening, I came home to the sound of a zipper dragging across fabric. A sharp, final kind of sound. Emily was in the bedroom, suitcase open on the bed, folding blouses with the precision of someone prepping evidence. Where are you going? I asked, leaning against the doorway. She didn't even look up. Company retreat. Strategy workshop. 2 days. I stepped inside. With who? She paused, barely but enough. The team. I stared at her. Emily. With who? She let out a breath, shoulders tightening. With Mark. And 3 others. It's not a secret. It is, I said, when you don't tell your husband until 20 minutes before you leave. She set a blouse down harder than she meant to. Ryan, don't start. This trip is mandatory. I walked closer, slow and deliberate. Let me ask you something straight. Are you going because you have to, or because he asked you to? Her jaw clenched. Don't twist this. It's my job. My advancement. I'm next in line for regional lead. I can't pass on opportunities just because you're feeling threatened. I'm not threatened, I said, keeping my tone steady. I'm your husband asking you not to climb into a company SUV with a man who already crossed a line in our driveway. She snapped the suitcase shut. He didn't cross a line. Emily, I watched him lean in like he was about to. She cut me off, voice sharp. Nothing happened. And what about what might happen on a 2-day trip? I countered. Late meetings, hotel bars, him acting friendly and extroverted. Remember that? She finally turned to face me. I'm not canceling a career opportunity because you saw something and built a whole drama around it. So you're going, I said quietly. Yes, she answered, just as quiet, but firmer. A long silence stretched between us. You know what this looks like, I said. She shook her head. What it looks like is that I've worked too hard to babysit your insecurities. I blinked, taken aback. Insecurities? Emily, I'm talking about respect. No, she said, pointing at me with a folded blouse still in hand. You're talking about control. You don't get to dictate where I go or who I work with. Something in me snapped, not in anger, but clarity. I'm not forbidding you from working, I said. I'm telling you that going on a trip with a man who obviously wants you is reckless for our marriage. And if you go, you're choosing him over us. She froze at that, just a fraction of a second, then recovered fast, tossing the blouse into the case. I'm choosing my career, she replied. If you can't handle that, that's your problem. I stepped back slowly, like the room had suddenly tilted. So that's where we are now? I asked. Your marriage is optional, but your promotion isn't. She didn't answer. She just zipped the suitcase the rest of the way, a long, final sound that felt like a line being drawn across the room. You're leaving tonight? I asked. In the morning, she said. I'll be back Sunday. I nodded once, forcing a breath. Okay, then go. She stopped in the doorway, hand braced against the frame. For a moment, it looked like she wanted to say something, anything. An apology, a promise, a reassurance. But all she said was, "Please don't make this harder than it has to be." Then she walked out. And the thing that chilled me most wasn't her words. It was how easily she said them. The first night Emily was gone, the house didn't just feel empty. It felt abandoned. I sat on the couch with the TV on, volume low, but I wasn't watching it. Just background noise to fill the growing silence. Her suitcase had been gone 12 hours, but the space she left behind felt bigger than it should have. Like the walls were breathing differently without her. At 9:11 p.m., my phone lit up. Her name. I didn't even wait for the second ring. "Hey," I answered, trying to sound normal. "Hey you," she said brightly, a little too brightly. "Just finished dinner." "Where?" I asked, keeping it casual. "Some Italian place near the hotel. The team's upstairs now, in some breakout session." Mark's being his usual over-caffeinated self. I let a pause stretch. Is he the one organizing all this? Technically, yeah, he's team lead. It's not like it's just the two of us, Ryan. I didn't say that, I replied. Her voice softened. You didn't have to. Look, it's just work. We're all exhausted. The most romantic thing anyone did tonight was complain about lukewarm lasagna. I chuckled, not because it was funny, but because I didn't know what else to do. Sounds thrilling. You know how these things are. Everyone's pretending to care about projections while secretly checking flights home. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to let that be enough. But something about her voice, it felt off. Not cold, not harsh. Just measured. Polished. Like she was holding the phone with one hand and keeping me at arm's length with the other. Anyway, she said, yawning softly. I've got a 7 a.m. session tomorrow, so I should probably turn in. Right? Sure. I hesitated. Sleep well. You too. Don't stay up watching conspiracy documentaries again. I'll try. Good night, Ryan. Click. That was night 1. Night 2, same time. She answered on the third ring. Hi, she said, slightly breathless. Sorry, elevator just opened. I was coming back from a group thing at the lounge. With Mark. I asked, before I could stop myself. With the group, she replied. Her tone wasn't annoyed, it was flatter than that. Honestly, I'm too tired to play games right now. I'm not playing, I said, standing in the dark kitchen, staring at the backyard. Just asking where my wife is. She exhaled. At a corporate offsite with half the sales department and exactly zero drama. Can we talk tomorrow? I stared at the window for a long second. Sure. Tomorrow. I didn't sleep much that weekend. I kept checking the clock at odd hours. 1:23, 3:08, 4:41, expecting to hear something. A ding, a buzz, something unexpected that might confirm what my gut already suspected. But nothing came. Just more silence. I stood at our bedroom window the morning she was due back, coffee in hand, watching the fog hang low over the neighbor's hedges. The swing set in the backyard hadn't moved in days. The house didn't creak the same without her pacing across it in heels. But the strangest thing? It didn't feel like she was returning. It felt like she'd already left. I heard her car door before I saw her. A hollow slam, followed by hurried footsteps up the driveway. I stepped out of the kitchen just as the front door pushed open and Emily stumbled inside. Hair a mess, eyes red, suitcase dragging behind her like dead weight. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Her shoulders were shaking before she even let go of the handle. Ryan, her voice cracked in half. Then she dropped the suitcase, staggered forward, and crashed into my chest like a wave breaking on rock. Ryan. I messed up. My hands hovered over her back. Not touching her, not pulling away. Just there. She clung tighter. I'm so sorry, she sobbed, words tumbling out like she'd been holding them back for miles. I slept with him. I was drunk. I didn't mean to. It just, she broke again, face buried against my shirt. I didn't mean to. I swear. I didn't move. Didn't speak. I just looked at the wall behind her, at the family photos spaced neatly across it, at the version of us frozen in happier times. Ryan, please say something, she begged, gripping the fabric in her fists. I finally stepped back. Her hands fell from me like they'd lost their strength. You slept with him, I said quietly. Not angry, not shocked, just confirming the words she'd thrown at my chest. She nodded frantically, tears streaking her face. I didn't mean for it to happen. I had too much. He kept pouring wine. I should have stopped. I should have called you. Please, I'm so sorry. I raised a hand slightly. Not to silence her, just to steady myself. I warned you, I said. Her breath hitched. I know you did. I should have listened. Please, Ryan, it was a mistake. It's not who I am. I don't want him. I don't. She reached for my arm. I stepped back again. And that small movement, that tiny gap, was what finally made her crumble. She dropped to her knees on the entry rug, hands over her face, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. Please don't throw this away, she cried. We can fix it. We can fix everything. I'll quit the job. I'll do therapy. I'll do anything. Just don't give up on us. Please, Ryan, please. I didn't yell. Didn't cry. Didn't kneel beside her like I would have a month ago. Instead, I walked to the front door. Her sobbing slowed, then stopped completely when she heard the deadbolt turn. I pulled the door open, the evening air seeping in, cold, almost metallic. The porch light flickered above us, buzzing like it was struggling to stay alive. She stared up at me from the floor, mascara smeared, breath trembling. Ryan, what are you doing? I didn't answer. I simply stepped aside and gestured toward the open doorway. Please, she whispered, shaking her head. Please don't do this. Let me explain. Let me try. Ryan, please. I kept my arm extended. Her face collapsed as the truth sank in. Not the truth of the affair, but the truth of its consequence. After a long, trembling moment, she pushed herself to her feet. Her voice was barely audible. Don't shut the door, she said. Please don't shut the door on me. But I didn't respond. She stepped out onto the porch, wiping her face with shaking fingers. She looked smaller in the doorway, like her guilt had hollowed her out. Ryan, she whispered one last time. The porch light flickered again, once, twice, then steadied just enough to catch the wet shine in her eyes. She turned away and walked down the steps into the cold. I watched until she reached her car. Only then did I close the door. Quietly. Not a slam. Just an ending. I hadn't even made it to the couch when the knock came. It was soft at first, almost hesitant. Then came two sharper raps. I opened the door expecting maybe Emily had forgotten her keys. Or maybe I hoped she had. But it wasn't her. It was a woman I'd never seen before. She stood under the flickering porch light like it was a spotlight she didn't mind standing in. Tall, confident posture, sharp jawline, dark eyes that didn't blink easily. She wore a dark trench coat, fitted at the waist, and heels that shouldn't have belonged on a quiet residential street. I'm Alyssa, she said smoothly, voice low and velvety. Mark's wife. I blinked. You're kidding. Her lips curled into a smirk. Not even a little. She glanced behind me like she expected to see a wrecked living room or broken glass on the floor. So, I take it your wife came clean? I didn't answer, but something in my face must have told her what she wanted to know. Yeah, she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Figured as much. She looked wrecked when she left his hotel room this morning. Eyes red, makeup all over the place. Sloppy. Mark told me she was just emotional about the pitch. I leaned on the doorframe, arms crossed. Why are you here? To offer you a drink, she said plainly. Or something stronger than that. I didn't say a word. She tilted her head, smile turning sharp. You and I have something in common. We got played by the same pathetic man and the same ambitious woman. You could sulk. Or we could level the scoreboard. She took a step closer, close enough for me to catch the faint trace of perfume. Cool, crisp, expensive. I'm not here to talk about emotions, she added. I'm here to offer balance. I gave a short laugh, though it wasn't exactly amused. You think I want revenge? She shrugged. I think you want something. And I'm offering what most people want after getting gutted, a distraction. I looked her in the eye. She didn't flinch. I'm not interested, I said. Calm. Final. Her smirk didn't drop immediately, but her eyes studied me, recalculating. No offense, I added, but I don't want to become what they already are. Now her expression softened, just a little. Not vulnerability exactly, but something like acknowledgement. Like she hadn't expected that answer, but it didn't offend her either. Suit yourself, she said, stepping back. You're either the strongest man I've met, or the dumbest. I gave a half shrug. Maybe both. Alyssa turned, heels clicking against the concrete like a metronome counting down her retreat. At the bottom step, she looked over her shoulder. For what it's worth, she said, voice lower now, you did the right thing. Kicking her out. She didn't wait for me to reply. I stood there until her taillights disappeared down the block. Then I stepped back inside, shut the door, and finally let the silence sit with me. Not angry, not broken, just still. I hadn't planned on going out. But after the week I'd had, sitting in my quiet living room while the world spun out around me, the idea of being around strangers, loud, distracted, disinterested strangers, sounded like a better alternative than silence. So I went to Hunter's bar. Just a small dive tucked behind a liquor store on Main, with dartboards that hadn't been balanced in years and a jukebox that played the same 5 songs every night. The kind of place where you could be invisible even if someone was sitting right beside you. I had 1 beer, then a second, didn't speak to anyone, didn't glance at the TV. I just sat there, rolling the condensation on the glass with my thumb. It was almost midnight when I stepped out the back door. The parking lot behind Hunter's was barely lit. One hanging lamp that buzzed like it hated its job, and a flickering exit sign that made everything look like a slow-motion crime scene. I didn't even hear their footsteps until the third one was behind me. 6 of them. Mark in the center. He wore a black jacket, open collar, hair still too perfect for a man lurking behind a bar like a low-budget villain. The others were just bodies, blank stares, arms crossed, trying to look tougher than they probably felt. Well, Mark said, spreading his arms like some game show host. Look who's out walking alone. I didn't stop moving, just kept walking toward my car. Ryan, he said louder now. I'm talking to you. I turned slowly, hands in my pockets. You brought 6 guys to do what? Intimidate me? Jump me? Get it over with. He chuckled, then walked forward a few steps. You've been making noise. Legal noise. Complaints. Inquiries. You think I don't hear things? Actually, I said calmly, I count on it. The smirk faltered for a split second. I'm warning you, he said, tone tightening. Let this die? You go around filing complaints, talking to lawyers. You're dragging things into places they don't belong. Like your hotel room? I asked deadpan. That hit. One of the guys behind him shifted awkwardly. Mark stepped closer, voice low. You think you're the hero in this? You think you're gonna win some war with paperwork? I didn't blink. I think you're scared. He laughed again, but it came out thinner this time. You don't know who I am. Sure I do, I said. You're not dangerous. You're just sloppy. You thought you could have the affair in the corner office without anyone calling your bluff. A muscle in his jaw twitched. Watch yourself. I am. I stepped past him. He turned, followed half a step behind. You're just bitter because your wife wanted more than a teacher's salary and a backyard swing set. I stopped, not because of the insult, but because I wanted him to know exactly how little he mattered. I turned to face him fully. You're not even the worst part of this. You're just the type of mistake people regret in hindsight. And with that, I walked right past him again. He didn't stop me. None of them did. They just stood there, 6 silhouettes trying to be wolves in the dim light, held back by something none of them could name. Maybe it was fear, or maybe it was the realization that I'd already survived the part that hurt. And what came next wasn't going to be quiet. By morning, everything felt still. Not peaceful, just still, like the air before snowfall, quiet, deliberate, waiting. I drove into Denver without telling anyone. No packed bag, no warning text. Just a folder of everything I'd collected, the emails, the screenshots, the name of the bar where Mark cornered me, and, more importantly, the name of the law office my friend Daniel had slipped me a few weeks back. Martin and Keene, LLP, 12th floor, corner office. Carpet soft enough to muffle hesitation. I sat across from a young associate named Dana Ruiz. Professional, clipped voice, but the kind of eyes that noticed everything and said little until necessary. She flipped through my documents slowly. Thorough. Calm. So, she said finally, placing the file down. You're filing for divorce. And you're pursuing workplace misconduct complaints against your wife's direct supervisor. I nodded once. Correct. Are you prepared for how public this could get? Mark followed me behind a bar last night with 6 guys. I'd say it's already pretty public. She gave a quick smile. Not amused, respectful. All right, she said. Let's begin. We filed the paperwork that day. The divorce papers would land in Emily's hands by end of week. But the real fire starter was the complaint lodged directly with Mark and Emily's corporate HR department. Within 48 hours, the investigation began. And that's when the dominoes started falling. At first, it was quiet. An email suspension here, a calendar audit there. But word spreads fast in companies like hers. Whispers started circling. Mark took an unexpected leave, to focus on personal matters. A few staffers who'd once bragged about closing after-hours deals were suddenly silent during meetings. And then, leaks. An anonymous report came forward, linking Mark to a series of backdoor vendor deals. Kickbacks. Trips labeled as vendor retreats that conveniently never showed up on official schedules. Dana forwarded me the internal memo as soon as it went out. External compliance audit initiated. Cooperation mandatory. By the following week, Mark's office was sealed. Literally, blinds drawn, laptop seized, nameplate gone. And Emily? She was put on administrative leave while the investigation expanded. I didn't celebrate. I didn't text anyone. I just sat in my car outside the law office, listening to the fan hum on the dashboard, and let the truth settle over me like quiet snowfall. I didn't do this for revenge. I did it because someone needed to. Mark didn't just cross a line with my marriage. He crossed lines for years, with employees, clients, numbers that were supposed to be clean. And now, for once, someone was holding him accountable. Maybe it wasn't loud justice, but it was justice, and it had finally started to take shape. It was just after 10 when the call came. I was sitting on the back steps, mug of cold coffee in my hands, the porch light throwing a dull orange glow across the lawn. The kind of night where everything felt still, like the world was holding its breath. Alyssa. Her name lit up my screen like it didn't belong there. I answered without speaking. Ryan, she said quickly, like she thought I might hang up. I'm sorry to call this late. Can you come over? It's urgent. I sat up a little straighter. What kind of urgent? She hesitated. Not that kind. I promise. I need 5 minutes. Please. She gave me an address in a neighborhood not far from mine. Townhomes. Narrow driveways. Dim porch lights. Too clean to be quiet. Too quiet to feel safe. I almost didn't go, but something in her voice, raw, stripped of that smirking confidence she wore the last time, pushed me off the step and toward my car. When she opened the door, Alyssa looked different. Not glamorous, not calculated. She was barefoot in leggings and an oversized hoodie, her hair up in a knot, face free of makeup. She looked tired in the honest way, like someone who hadn't been pretending all day. Sorry for dragging you out, she said, stepping aside. Come in. The inside of her place was sharp-edged and curated, but the wine bottle on the counter was half gone, and a sweatshirt was crumpled on the back of the couch. Lived in tension. She poured a glass without asking and handed it to me. I didn't know who else to call, she said. It's not like I have a long list of people who've been screwed over by the same man. I took a sip. So what's urgent? She sat down across from me, glass in hand, resting her bare feet on the edge of the couch like she didn't care how she looked anymore. I just wanted to say thank you. I raised an eyebrow. For what? For going after him. For not folding. Mark's been untouchable for years. I watched him ruin people, quietly, legally, cleverly. And now, for the first time, he's actually afraid. You did that. I didn't do it for you. I know. That's why it worked. We sat in silence for a beat. Then she said, softer now, it's strange, right? You and I were just names on someone else's betrayal. Supporting characters in their little private drama. Until we weren't. I looked at her. She held my gaze, no games this time. When did you know that something was wrong? I asked. No, she said. When you were done. I didn't answer right away. I watched the wine shift in the glass like it might hold something wiser than I could say. When she came home and admitted it, I said. There was no big scene. No yelling. I just knew. Whatever we were, it had already ended. The words were just catching up. Alyssa nodded. I didn't get that moment. Mark never admits anything. He just smirks like he's already planning the next move. I had to decide it was over while he still acted like nothing had changed. We talked like that for a while. No flirting. No agenda. Just two people sitting in the aftermath, comparing wounds like soldiers in a war neither of us asked to fight. But there was something in the quiet that started to shift. She laughed once, soft, real, at something I said about Mark's hair gel and the way he probably believed it was bulletproof. I laughed with her. Then it got quiet again, but not uncomfortable. She looked at me for a long moment. I'm not asking for anything, she said. I just don't want to feel invisible tonight. The silence stretched thin between us. I set the glass down, and then we were moving at the same time. No rush. No heat. Just need. Human. Honest. Her lips were warm, her hands trembling just slightly as they found my shoulders. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. And for one moment, not out of revenge, not to prove anything, but for the first time in weeks, I felt something that wasn't bitterness or numbness or control. I felt human again. When it was over, we didn't say anything for a while. She rested her head on my chest, fingers tracing the edge of the blanket she'd pulled around us. I know this doesn't fix anything, she murmured. No, I said quietly, but it reminded me I'm still here. Outside, the wind pressed against the windows, but inside the room, for once, it was warm. Not peaceful, but warm. The courtroom didn't feel dramatic. No gasps, no pounding gavels, just dull murmurs, stiff benches, and fluorescent lights that made everyone look like they hadn't slept in days. My divorce had finalized a week earlier. No contest, no screaming match, just signatures, handoffs, and a judge who looked bored while confirming that 6 years of marriage could be undone in under 6 minutes. But today wasn't about me and Emily. Today was about Mark. And he finally looked small. Gone were the tailored suits and polished bravado. He wore a wrinkled navy blazer that hung off him like it had belonged to a more confident man. His tie was crooked. His posture slumped. Even his smirk looked tired. I sat near the back, quietly watching. Emily sat near the front, her posture tight and guarded. She'd been called in to testify about internal procedures, confirming emails, timelines, office behavior. She didn't look at me once, but she knew I was there. Her voice didn't shake on the stand. Not once. She answered clearly, precisely, never exaggerating, never playing the victim. Just facts, cold and cut from stone. And somewhere in the middle of it, I realized this was her version of an apology. She wasn't asking me to forgive her anymore. She was asking the world to at least believe she hadn't lost all of her integrity. The prosecutor did the rest. By the time the verdict came down, no one seemed surprised. The jury had that tired kind of look that meant they'd seen more than they expected to. Guilty. On multiple counts. The judge ordered him into immediate custody. A bailiff moved toward him with shackles. Mark didn't flinch until I stood up and walked down the aisle. I didn't stop until I was just behind him, close enough that he could hear me. I leaned in, voice quiet. Your wife, I whispered, was amazing. He snapped toward me, eyes blazing. You, he snarled, but the words died in his throat as 2 officers grabbed his arms and yanked him back. The cuffs clicked shut. He lunged anyway, like some instinct overrode reason, but it was pitiful. A jerk forward, a twist of the shoulder, and then his face slammed against the table as the officers forced him down. You're done, one of them muttered as they pulled him back up. He didn't look at me again, didn't look at anyone, just kept his head down as they led him away. The room buzzed with movement, but I stayed where I was, breathing slow. Emily walked past me without speaking, but she did pause, not long, just a beat, and in that moment, our eyes met. There wasn't anger or guilt, just finality. I didn't nod, didn't smile, but she knew. We'd made it through the war, and we were both walking out of it without pretending to be who we were before. It was late afternoon when she came back. I heard the knock before I saw her. Not loud, not urgent, just hesitant. The kind of knock you give when you're not sure if you're welcome or if the door's going to open at all. I opened it anyway. Emily stood there in a gray sweater and jeans, no makeup, eyes red around the edges like she hadn't slept much since court. She held nothing in her hands. No bags, no papers, just herself. Can I come in? She asked. I stepped aside. She walked in like she didn't recognize the place, like it had changed. In some ways, it had. She sat on the edge of the couch and folded her hands together. Silence filled the space between us, but it wasn't heavy. Just waiting. Finally, she spoke. I heard a rumor, she said quietly, about you and Alyssa. I stayed standing, hands in my pockets. Yeah. Her shoulders sank like someone had slowly let the air out of her. So it's true. I nodded. Emily looked down at her hands, rubbed her thumb across the edge of her palm. I guess I knew. I mean, how could you not? She gets it. She went through it. I didn't correct her. She blinked a few times, then looked up at me. I never thought this is how it would end, she said, voice soft. Not like this. Not with courtrooms and lawyers and silence. Neither did I, but I didn't say it. I'm sorry, she said again. Not just for what I did, but for what I let die before I ever did it. That one hit a little harder. Still, I just nodded. I know. She stood slowly, brushing her palms on her jeans like she needed something to do with her hands. I won't bother you again, she said. I just needed to look you in the eye and say it. I opened the door. She walked toward it, paused on the threshold, then looked back one last time. I hope she's good to you. She's honest, I said. Emily nodded once. Then she walked out. Didn't look back. Didn't say goodbye. Just stepped off the porch and into whatever came next. I closed the door behind her. The house was quiet again. Not hollow. Not tense. Just still. Peaceful even. For the first time in a long while. That was the end of my story. I keep thinking about Emily. How she stood in that courtroom, not for herself, but to bring Mark down when she could have stayed silent. She could have protected her job, her reputation, but she didn't. So tell me honestly, did she do the right thing? Or was it just too little, too late? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories like mine, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. I've got more to tell.